Hello, Erik. Welcome to the Sound Angle. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Just it's a rainy day here in Nashville right now. So, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. This is the first chapter ever of the Sound Angle from Nine Angles for Forte, powered by SAE Mexico. And we're really, really happy to have you here. So it's not raining today, but it will in a couple of hours. And I want to just tell our audience a little bit about you and explain the audience that we're going to divide this talk in two parts. The first part is you, your career in the music industry, and the second part, probably the most important one, would be talking about music and psychology, which is a topic that it's not my expertise, but I find it fascinating, and I know you like it, and see what we come up with, see what happens with that talk. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to do. So two parts, technical background, music industry background. Second part, music and psychology. But I want the audience to know who you are. So I'm going to very quickly read a little bit about you. So for this, I need my reading glasses. At some point in life, this happens. So Erik Walter Thompson is the founder of Walter Audio, a sound agency that specializes in sonic branding, music playlisting for commercial spaces, audio user interfaces and user experiences, and audio advertising. He began his career in the music industry, making records on analog tape in Nashville, Tennessee, where he is right now, working with artists like the Secret Sisters, Margot Price, Dave Rawlings, and Gillian Welch, Jeremy Ivy, William Tyler, and Marty Stewart. In addition to his work in music, he has worked highest levels of the audiobook and podcast world and played an integral role in building and scaling Real Audiobooks into one of the largest audiobook post-production studios in North America. So that's it.
That's it.
Welcome, Erik. I'll just explain very quickly to the audience that we met actually a couple of years ago in the Mix Immersive conference in Nashville, where you were super kind to me and helped me go through the studio tour, and we had a great time. So since then, we've been in touch and friends, so I'm really happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And that was a really great event. And hopefully we'll see you back there again. I'm involved in the Audio Engineering Society here in Nashville, and I think we're usually a sponsor of the event, but I think we're going to be a little bit more involved in it this year. So maybe I will be putting in a good word for you to be, getting some kind of representation there, or maybe they'll talk about you even. That would be cool.
Thank you. It would be fantastic. I'm looking forward. I really want to go back. I have many questions, but it would take us too long to go through everything. Like I wanted to know about the general state of the music industry before, in terms of music, before we get into sonic branding, which I find it fascinating. But we can leave that for later. Since you just mentioned the sonic branding, I'd love to know more about it. Yeah, because part of our topic. Well, the main topic will be music and psychology. So you mentioned it. How would you give us an example of how to create a sonic branding for a company? Because I read that it must be coherent, for example, with the visual logo of the company. How would you make a coherent sonic logo once you know the visual logo of a company, for example?
Yeah, so we, brands describe themselves. A brand is, there's a company uses branding to define itself, and they usually define it with words. They define it with, visual aspects, and this is just the extension of that in sound. And so, in some ways, it's not that different from understanding, like, if I was doing a Taylor Swift record. That record might have a certain sonic identity to it, right? It might have a certain sound. Or you could even look at like the Catholic Church has its own sonic identity. These sounds that instantly cue, lots of religious organizations have this, and it's the same thing with a brand, but it's not something that they always think about. So first, it's essentially all the stuff. Brands have a lot of the material that you can just take and understand it and then create something from that. But there's a ton of levels of making sure that it works and that it's really aligned. And so we're really big on, like, Carl Jung developed archetypes I think he did about 4 different archetypes, and those have been expanded out to 12 different archetypes that people can associate with their as a human, as a person, but it's also brands can kind of define themselves with an archetype. And we lean into that, and we have some frameworks for developing, working with stakeholders in the brand to have a system where they understand, what their sound is. And then we create sonic mood boards, which, it's like a visual mood board, but in sound, and get an understanding of this, of the sound of, the identity of the brand. And then we create assets, but we don't, we go through a level of testing. So, and that's where it really starts to align. So what we do is test based on certain. So there are many ways to test it. And my favorite is implicit association testing. And this is where it gets into the subconscious factor. So implicit association testing is actually testing the subconscious response. So, like, if I asked you, if you like a song by the artist Pink, let's say, you might, or if I play it for you, you might kind of tap your toes. But if I asked you if you liked it, you might not tell me the truth, because it might not be very cool if you say that you like it. And so I'm not interested in that, what filters through your conscious mind. I want to know what made it tap your toes. And so implicit association testing is really powerful, because there's many ways to do it. One of them is like a gamified way that looks like a dating app. And so we process sound faster than vision. And so what we do is we have like a emojis. So a smiley face might, we'll test you first. You go through and you swipe. Smiley face means happy. Frown face means sad. And we time how fast you do that. And then we prime you with sound. So if it's like fingernails on a chalkboard and it's a smiley face, that's a bad sound, but a happy image. Your conscious mind, your subconscious mind is going to say, oh, this is negative. But your conscious mind is going to have to override and say, but it's a smiley face, so we need to go this way. And the time difference from when you didn't have a sound versus when you did have a sound lets us know how bad or good that sound was. If it's a good sound, it might make it swipe faster. And so we can put a specific number on that implicit response. And it works almost like Pavlov with his dogs, right? He rang the bell and their mouths started to water. It wasn't that they decided my mouth will now start watering. It just happened to their bodies. And sound has that impact on us as well. And so with sound, if you think of like the Netflix Sonic logo, if that Sonic logo has been tested and creates positive emotional response, and we process sound faster than vision, when the Netflix logo comes up, that Sonic logo creates this subconscious positive association with the visual logo. So it's just this instant kind of triggering of a positive response.
Okay. But does it have to be melodic, like the Sonic logo, or can it be just a sound? Because the Netflix logo, it's pretty much a major chord, right?
Yeah, it can be any way. Nothing. I would never. If you ever run into anyone who tells you anything should be one way, you should just turn around and walk away. Is how I feel. Like, I think nothing should be put in a box. Now there are certain things, like if you want something that a human being can sing, that's important, right? Because you're putting your brand in their mouth essentially and in their mind. So melodic is certainly an advantage. Yeah. But for certain, like the THX sound at theaters, I don't know if they have those in Mexico. They probably do, but it just has this huge rise
we do,
in pitch. It's not something that you can sing, but it is such a distinctive sound that is, I mean, I guess you could kind of sing it, but so it doesn't have to be. And it can just be a cool sound design
isn't
thing.
It? So it's very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just distinctive. It's something that you could hear it, and it's going to cue that brand so quickly because we lock in sound locks in memories. It's like, and that's the other thing with a brand. The two, there are a million different branding frameworks, but every single one of them wants to have an emotional, a positive emotional reaction or a good emotional connection with their ideal customer, and they want to be memorable. And we already talked about the emotional response. Now, music is like, you probably have a song that you learned when you were a teenager and haven't heard it in 20 years, and it can come on and you can sing every single word, but you can't remember what you wrote down on your grocery list in the morning. Sound locks in memory unlike anything else.
Yes.
And so when you have something like a melodic mnemonic like that, we call them a mnemonic, is or a sonic logo, then that is something that can just be, it just gets ingrained in our brains very, very easily. It's just how our brains work.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, sound is really powerful. That's why we have hit songs. Hit songs somehow touch in a super memorable order of notes which can also become addictive. But I wanted to ask you, yeah, I understand that. But for example, if you wanted to be coherent with a visual logo or with a specific identity of a company, let's go back to the classical Netflix example. It's a streaming company. The visual logo is just a red N, like, it's red. So would there be any relationship between the sonic logo and the fact that it's red, for example? Would you take that into account? Or you just see what happens, and maybe because we see Netflix every day, we just put them together and we accept it, but maybe there was nothing that joined them in the first place. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, a brand is so much more than just the visual logo, right? Netflix has an entire brand identity and certain kinds of messaging that they want to get across. And so it's certainly not just we look at the logo and try to make a sound that works with it. It's a sound that should instantly cue all of your brand attributes in a 2 to 3 second composition, which is a really big tall task. So it's not just about linking it with the visual. However, we can do testing and see, like, I think it was Nissan or one of the car companies, they had like a heartbeat sound in their sonic logo. And when you just heard when in testing, when you just heard the heartbeat alone, it actually triggered, we have these associations with that in like film and just in general, like a heartbeat makes you feel it drives your anxiety up. But when they paired that with the visual logo of Nissan, it actually, the scoring of that sound actually did much better, because in that case, in that context, that heartbeat means like a powerful engine and driving fast, and having, like control over this big. So it's you have all these different levels, and like brands will have, they want to be a brand that's, progressive and maybe like a caretaker kind of an archetype, and they want to, feel premium, like an expensive product. All of these things are what we take into account. And of course, absolutely, the visual logo is part of that, but it's not, it's probably one of the least heavily weighted things that we focus on. I would say is the visual logo. Now, that said, like, there's so much with sound. There's the that just triggers certain kinds of emotional responses, and some people have that synesthesia where they like see colors or hear colors or whatever. But there's also something called, I think it's called the booba kiki effect, or it's something like that, where you have a word like booba and a word like kiki, and those are, kiki sounds sharp, right? It sounds like sharp kind of like sounds, whereas booba sounds like round and warm sounds. And colors can have those effects as well and trigger that kind of response that, that's subjective. Like, a lot of people have different experiences, but there are some universal truths in some of this stuff. And so we account for some of that as well. Does that answer get to about like some kind of an answer here?
It does, yeah. It makes me think about the seventh art. You know that cinema, it's called the seventh art. And there's a reason for that, I think it's interesting. The fact that you put some visual information together with the sound, it's neither visual nor sonic. It becomes something new, something different. Which, and the example that you use for the Nissan, it's a great example. I mean, something anxious that may mean something negative for most of us if we just listen to that song. But when you put it together with a car running, whatever, it actually makes it exciting. And maybe the car itself is not even a great car, but the fact that you put those together, they become something new. So that's like cinema. It's the seventh art at the end of the day.
Absolutely. There are a couple terms or a couple ways that people talk about this. One is cross-modalism. So when you have multiple senses interacting with each other, they kind of become greater than they would be on their own. And in the branding perspective, the more sensory experiences that you can connect with someone, the more neurological diversity you have with your brand. Brands are all about creating memory structures. And so like, it's not like memories get locked away in a safe and you can just recall them anytime. You have different things like Coca-Cola has all the words and the visual logo and the color red and the sound of the Coca-Cola, opening or whatever. These are all create memory structures that in advertising, you refresh those memory structures and create a web of memories. And so if you have them in multiple sensory experiences, you have neurological diversity. They show up in different parts of your brain. Another thing related to this is that sound can actually have an impact on how we taste. There's tasting with like whiskeys, or on airplanes, they'll design, the chefs will design recipes to be extra salty because the low hum of the airline actually dulls our salty, flavor, our experience with salty foods. And so when you eat on an airplane, if it tastes kind of bland, that might be because of the sound that you're experiencing.
Wow, that's fascinating. I did not know about that. How does sound have an impact on our taste? I mean, you just gave an example, but can you expand that a little bit? Like,
I can't give you I just know what I told you from people who are much smarter than me. There's a guy, there's one guy named Steve Keller who is, he works for Sirius and Pandora. They're all one company, but he's a really big on this stuff. And another guy, I think his name is Charles Cates, but I could be wrong about that. But they are experts in this field, and I don't know the details of how it works, but I just know that it is something that works, and it's something brand like restaurants and whiskey companies and stuff can or do for special experiences for their customers and all that stuff.
That's amazing. It would be worth doing some more research into that, because I wouldn't be surprised that sound has an impact on how we taste things and etc. Can we go a little bit into, you mentioned about biophilia, with sounds of nature. Like, let's go back to the origins. Like, we come from the caves, and we used to live in a cave. So, for example, reverb, it's a very important thing for us because it can tell us that we are in an enclosed space and therefore we feel secure. Things like that. But in terms of the sounds of nature, as you were mentioning, how could we use that information to do better branding, sonic branding, or simply better music? And let's bring in the immersive topic into the talk, like, right?
Yeah, so with the biophilic soundscaping, it's the sound counterpart to biophilic design is something where you introduce plants and circadian-based light rhythms or just natural light into a space that makes people feel better. And in about every space you're in, you look around you and everything is designed by humans and almost none of it is designed for sound. We've boxed ourselves in from a world that has given us so much information, so much sonic information, right? So like birdsong, for instance, is something that it works as a natural alarm clock for us because we've evolved over millennia to hear birdsong at the dawn chorus, early in the morning, to get up and get moving.
Yeah.
Birdsong also signals to us that there's nourishment nearby. There's food and water probably. And if that birdsong were to cut instantly, it would trigger our fight or flight response in our limbic system because it might signal to us that a predator is nearby.
Something
Sound
is
is
wrong.
Sound is our natural alarm system. That's why it's faster than I think all of our other senses. Definitely faster than touch and vision. It's there to let us know that there's a warning, and that's why it's connected directly to our limbic system. And so it also gives us all kinds of information. There's something called entrainment, where two oscillating bodies will eventually sync up. And if you sit next to the ocean and hear the sound waves, that the wave cycles per minute is actually equal to most people's resting heart rates. And so your heart rate will start to sync up with that sound. Nature just gives us so many cues about life that largely happen in our subconscious mind that we don't really realize is happening, but it makes us feel good. It feels good to sit next to water. And then from a storytelling perspective, I think with immersive audio, it's there's so much to consider on, I would just say, like your psychological response to sound. And the more you can be informed by this kind of stuff, I think the better you will, the better your results will be. Essentially, I think there's understanding what is going to trigger someone's limbic system, their fight or flight response, and result in a huge chemical dump in their brain is important. And there's, studies that have shown like sounds that come behind you and above you are more likely to trigger your fight or flight response. And I've heard mixers talk about this. They put background vocals back there and it scared them, whenever it came up in the song. So understanding this stuff, I think, is a really helpful process especially in immersive, where you're given this new layer of storytelling. And that storytelling is not just in film. I think storytelling happens in music, and we should look at it like a storytelling medium as opposed to, I don't know, maybe just whatever, trying to make a catchy tune or whatever.
Sure. Well, that's a very interesting topic. Yeah, the sound, moving sound, it's a very strong information. Sound coming from behind us, where we don't have a visual contact with it, is in immediate danger, or at least it's an alert. What could that be? Should I run? Do I recognize it? What's the distance of that sound source? So yeah. And funny enough, I do a lot of immersive audio, and I still don't think I have taken good advantage of that information. And I haven't heard immersive music, or I haven't seen movies that take advantage of that as to aid suspension or to aid danger. Like drama, for example, that could be used to help the drama or the feeling of danger that happens in a movie, or the climax of a song. Maybe not the climax, but the tension of a song. All music has tension and release. Yeah. So I haven't heard anything that satisfies me, not including my own music.
Yeah.
So, but we should definitely explore that further.
I know I had an experience. It was at the Immersive event. I don't know if it was the one that you were at or a different one, but we were at Starstruck Studios. They have a really small immersive room, and we were listening to something. I can't remember the artist, but background vocals came in from above and behind, and it was kind of a whispery thing. And the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. And it felt like if someone kind of stands behind you and whispers, and you get that feeling. And I remember right then at that moment, I was like, this is something you cannot achieve. This physical response in my body could never have been done with stereo. It's an interesting thing. It's not to say, oh, this is better because of this. It's just like, wow, here is a very physical response that I'm noticing that cannot happen with stereo because of that coming from behind. And it also can't happen,
of course,
in binaural. It's at least I don't think anyway, unless it's really good. But
well, that's what we want with immersive audio.
Yeah.
And the storytelling is quite another subject, but how do you see storytelling in music, because I want to go back to the beginning of this talk. You wanted to be a music producer. You are a music producer, but you had also to choose in between producing what you love, what you want, and then sometimes we have to be realistic, and we have to make a living, etc., etc. So what's next for you? What's your what would be your dream? I mean, you're doing sonic branding now, which I find it fascinating, but are you going to keep producing records? What would be your dream from now on in terms of record production? Or do you think you've abandoned that for now?
I don't think I've abandoned it. I think I felt that the music industry had taken away my ability to enjoy music to some extent. And that's not a problem with the music industry. It's my own problem with like how I handled my life, but I got to the point where I really wanted to go listen to like some, Atlantic Records doo-wop record from the 1940s and just dive into that whole world. But that's not relevant to what's happening now, what's hot right now. And I need to go listen to what's hot right now because I need to be at the top level competing with the best. And I felt guilty to go and listen to those old doo-wop records or some old, country blues recording from 1929. And again, it's not the music industry's fault, but it was certainly something I was experiencing and losing, a little bit of what I loved in music. And so I decided, with respect to that, just making a living making records, I didn't want that to be something I did. I did not want to have to tie capitalism to this really creative, beautiful thing that I loved. And but I still am producing records. This agency is new, but my vision for it is to really be a full agency with multiple composers who work for like a full staff. And ideally we will have a studio space here in Nashville with multiple rooms, where people are making records all day, and we're doing what I've always done, but I'm really, really interested in the work that I'm doing now, and I just feel like it's striking this specific chord for me that feels really fresh and exciting every single day. It's so exciting, and this perspective, if there's like a purpose for my business, it would be to increase sound awareness. I think that in this world where we're so constantly needing to keep ourselves entertained, it's important if we could sit somewhere and not look at our phones, but just listen and focus on the sound around us. That would be really, really good for all of us. The world would be a better place if we could all just stop and pay attention to the sound. I also think from a, just making the world a better place concept, there are some organizations that focus on promoting a silent spaces in the world. And now there's no such thing as silence on Earth, but it means not being able to hear mankind. So most natural spaces you go, you hear airplanes flying over, you hear a car in the distance.
Yeah.
And so preserving those spaces is something that I would love to, donate to with our business. But this raising awareness of sound on multiple levels, and the World Health Organization just listed sound as, I think, the number 2 largest man-made pollutant.
Sure.
So I feel like the work that I'm doing is really elevated to this new level of, it's not just music, it's sound. It's like if I put on a record, yes, there was a recording that was made there, but there's also like birds chirping outside and my dog farting over here. And that's part of the experience, this ephemeral experience of sound that I'm really interested in, almost more than, what kind of chord did he play there? Or what was, it sounds like they're doing, like heavy room mics on the drums, like I'm so interested in the moment and that ephemeral experience with sound. And I feel like what I'm building is focused on that so much more than like getting a Grammy or something like that.
Right. Sure, of course. Well, maybe you can produce a sound record such as electroacoustic music, acousmatic music. You know, I come from there, but sometimes I also need pop music, and I also need chords and rhythms, etc. But regarding the silence, yes, that's why we build studios. Well, at least the studio is a great place to be because it's silent. Otherwise, you have to go camping in the middle of nature to feel that silence. And yeah, we need that. Yeah. But Erik, I think we're going to have to shut it down at this point. I don't know if you want to add something to what we just discussed, to your,
I would say,
career, to
just if anyone wants to connect with me, if this is interesting to you and you want to continue the conversation, I'm not on most social media very much except LinkedIn. So if you look up Erik Walter Thompson on LinkedIn, and walteraudio.com is my website, those are the best ways to get in touch. And, you know, I'm always interested in talking about sound, if you couldn't tell.
Sure. And we will put your contact details and your webpage on the description of this video, obviously. So yeah, of course. And hopefully we'll repeat this because we don't have too much time, but we're going to do this frequently. So I'd like to have you again at some point because it is really interesting to talk about sound and psychology and sonic branding, which is kind of a new thing. And I don't know, see how we can have you back here pretty soon, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But Erik, this is Walter Audio, Erik Walter Thompson. Thank you very much for being here on the Sound Angle from 9 Angles for Forte, powered by SAE Mexico. And we'll see you again pretty soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Pablo.